What is going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our weekly live stream. This time, we've got our AFC Championship game, right? We're heading into the Super Bowl next week over there in Atlanta, and we got to figure out who the contenders are going to be. So here in this live stream, going to break down what you need to know both for props and for DFS. And if you got any questions, don't be afraid at all to go ahead and throw them down in chat. This time is as much of yours as it is everyone here. So if you've got thoughts, any ideas you want to bounce off of me or really anyone down in the chat too, feel free to go ahead and let us know. But until then, welcome on in. Say hi down in chat if you're already here. Like I see a bunch of you have. We have Jackson, Nick down there, Antonio, Mark, Curtis, Martin. First off, welcome on in, fellas. A few comments we've got here. So first off, Jackson, I appreciate the kind words. He says Luke has been insanely profitable here for this year. You have a 2v2 that you're curious on. So you've got Glover versus Haddon, and I guess that's versus, right, a Hodges and Svenny. Or is it you're doing it by like the top tier versus the bottom tier? Okay, so I like that better. It makes my job easier, Jackson. So it's a Glover versus Haddon up there towards the top. And then you've got Hodges and Svenny towards the bottom. So frankly, I think if you're going Haddon up top, I think I like maybe Hodges a little bit more down low. The reason why I say that, right, is the ownership, is kind of distributed differently between those four players. By taking a Haddon and a Hodges, you have one chalky, maybe one slightly lower owned player and a Trell Haddon. And then if you started with the Glover, right, well, then you kind of want to get different down low, right? That's where I think Svensson, who's maybe a little bit lower owned than Lee Hodges, might make sense for you there. So I would say it kind of depends, but just make sure that you're matching up, right? Maybe one of the higher owned guys with one of the lower owned. That would be my advice to you there. What's going on, Nick? He says, do you think anybody will just throw all 50 guys into the optimizer? I can guarantee you they will. In fact, I think a lot of the top tier 150 maxers are going to use that same strategy. I mean, we've seen it even in like 70 player fields. I know at Eastlake last year, there were at least 4 or 5 pros that went out there and played all 30 players. Now on a 30 player field, a little bit easier, right, than what you have here with all 50. But you're going to have a lot of pros that go out there and play 35 to 40 players, right? And it'll be all about how much of every player that they're taking, right? Certain guys, I'm sure they'll be over the field on. And then, even taking everyone, right, you're going to be under the field on at least probably half your player pool too. The thinking there, Nick, right, for the people that are doing that is that you can cover more outcomes, right, when there's only like 50 or in the case of next week, right, only 30 people. So you can afford to do that, right? You don't need to have double the field on every player when double the field is going to be like 45 to 50%. Right, for some of the chalky players. When you only have 50 players, you might only need like 25 to 35% of everybody to touch enough outcomes to feel comfortable with it, right? And that's so dependent on each pro's strategy. So I know a lot of the guys that do like 400 lineups, they do exactly that. And this week with 50 players, I would be shocked to not see at least a few do that. What's up, bro? Low-key feels like a major this week. Yeah, I agree with you, Antonio. Major championship field, major championship type of golf course. What's going on, Mark? What's going on, Curtis? We got Martin and the best way to be unique. I would say lineup construction wise. Let's bring up the weather. We'll talk about that here in a second. But yeah, Nick, to answer your question, it's a great question, by the way. It's really tough this week, right? The ownership is a lot more condensed because there's only 50 players. And like even our low owned guys, like the guys that are unowned this week are like 5% owned, right? So to get different, it's a little bit more difficult, right? We got to be a little bit more creative about it. I would go the lineup construction method. I'd go out there, try and take players that are a little bit more balanced, right? If you want to do it, just go over here to Draftkings, right? You got to fade the top end of the board, right? If you really want to get different this week, a real easy way to do so is with lineup construction. A lot of people, and we'll talk about this when we go through the actual player pool, are going to go studs and duds, right? They're going to try and take at least one of the guys up there in the 10K plus range. They're at the very least, going to take a 9K golfer, right, and mix them in with one of those top end players, if not taking like 2 of the 10K plus guys. I mean, really making it a studs and duds kind of lineup because we have the 5K players again, right? If you haven't noticed, I'm sure you have, right here on a Wednesday, of course. None of you are just getting into your lineups now. $5,500, right? You can afford, right, 2 of those 10K players. So if you're going to get different this week, Nick, ownership is always a way to accomplish that, right? It's a little bit less efficient this week because of some, only 50 players to work with. But maybe you do it with lineup construction, right? Maybe you fade the top end of the board. You say, you know what? I think enough of these mid-tier players are going to hit this week that maybe you don't have to have one of these top three. You don't have to have the chalk Cantlay, right? Or a lot of people are playing Hovland and Fleetwood, right? That I like in my lineups. Maybe you start with a Fleetwood, right? Instead of him being like your second or your third man in, and you completely avoid the 6K range, right? So it's like a two-headed fade, right? You're fading the top end of the board. And then in your case, Nick, right, you could also fade like the bottom end of the board. I've heard that idea thrown around a little bit by a few different people I respect around the industry. I think it was Toe Tag and Tambo that said it on Mayo's stream today. And I'm not doing that, just for full transparency. I might have a few lineups just by chance that end up a little bit more balanced, but a vast majority of my build will be studs and duds. So I'm going with the ownership perspective. Frankly, in a week like this, it's like not a good GPP week, right? Like I'm still playing in the GPP because I enjoy them, right? It's just 1 week, right? I can go out there, I can throw my entries into there. But if you're going out there with most of your exposure, right, and you're really worried about ROI, for me, at least with main slate this week, I'm not worrying about it all that much. I know it's going to be volatile. I'd probably play single entries, right? I would try and avoid even worrying about trying to differentiate yourself because it just feels so negative EV, right? To avoid the top end of the board, right? I'm letting you know that's a way to differentiate yourself, but it doesn't feel great, right? Especially when like you have guys at $5,500 that could reasonably hit this week. It's a tough one. I'll say that. It's going to be a fun week with DFS. We'll have to see how it works out. Let's talk about this golf course. So we'll get into questions. We'll get into some strategy stuff here in a few minutes, but let's focus on what we're going to see here over the next 4 days, which the last time we saw this golf course, Olympia Fields Country Club, or maybe it's golf club, not sure. Olympia Fields, either way, over there near Chicago, Illinois, played really hard. In fact, per John Rahm, per a few other players in the field, played exactly like a U.S. Open. U.S. Open entails long rough, really difficult, hard to hit fairways out there, and firm and fast conditions, right? And the last factor there, right, the first few are going to be the same this time around, but firm and fast conditions were really what defined it there in 2020. So that's why it played 1.8 over par. In fact, that included one round where the scoring average was just 0.33 over par over there for Sunday's round, which might be a little bit of foreshadowing for some of the rounds that we see this weekend. There on Sunday, the winds died down and a golf course that was still firm and fast, but without some of the external elements was left to be exposed. This time around, we get a soft version, right? So I mentioned it's not going to be firm and fast. They've gotten a ton of rain over the last 3 or 4 days. In fact, I think it's just over 2 inches that they've gotten since the weekend. There on the Friday or Saturday is when that count is from, which means just like we had for the last few weeks on tour, right, might be lift clean in place early. In fact, tomorrow, because of some of the chance of rain early, I think that'll definitely be lift clean in place. But the issue is, at least for tomorrow, now for Friday through Sunday, I just want to say this now, I think it's going to play way easier than what we saw in 2020. I think you might see a scoring average under par for a few days. And that's a huge hot take, by the way. I can guarantee you there's no one expecting that over this weekend, but you might see it. You might see an under par scoring average. Reason why I say that is Sunday, right, in 2020, it hardly played over par, right? 0.33 shots over par there on Sunday, and it was still firm and fast. On Friday, we're going to look at some of the weather forecast here now. They're calling for no winds, right? You can see early, right? I guess it's 10 mile an hour winds, right? But it's going to be receptive out there. They could take this place under par. So don't be completely mind fucked. If this golf course is one at I said -9, I think on my course preview Monday, I've adjusted that to -15. I think these guys, especially from Friday on, are going to tear up this golf course. Now let's talk about tomorrow. Tomorrow is not going to be the birdie fest that you see for the rest of the week. And there's one major reason why. HRRR forecast. This has been in the forecast the entire week. This windstorm that pretty much lasts the entire day tomorrow has not just come up out of nowhere. In fact, this forecast for the wind has been very consistent this week. I couldn't tell you why. I'm not a meteorology student. I'm not somebody that pretends to be a meteorologist out here. What I do know is that every single weather forecast here is calling for just ridiculous winds tomorrow. Now, some of them, they're calling for like 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts, like we have with the NAM. Some of them are a little bit more tempered, like you'll see with some of the ones here, right, where you can see it's like 20 to 25 miles an hour there for the afternoon hours, but they're all nasty. Like no matter which way you split this up, they're all going to be extremely unpleasant conditions. The reason why I say it's going to play so much harder tomorrow is not only does it affect your iron shots, right, but the off the tee fairways that are already hard to hit here, that 5-6 inch Kentucky bluegrass rough, is going to be hit all day, right? It's going to be next to impossible to hit the fairways. The greens out of the rough are going to be next to impossible to hit. So you're going to see maybe a few players that can navigate the wind, that happen to keep their ball in play, which is just going to be a feet and a half tomorrow, that I think might shoot like 3-4 under par. I think you might see a few guys do that. Your first round leader, if I had to guess, would be like 4, maybe 5 under par tomorrow. But you're going to see a lot of over par rounds. If you're even slightly off, if you're even 1 inch into that Kentucky bluegrass rough, you're going to be shit out of luck. You're going to be out there looking for your golf ball, perhaps not even finding it just like a foot or two off the fairway. That's how deep some of this rough can be. And it's not just, if you're off the tee shots, right? The rough surrounds every single green. So unlike a TPC Southwind, right, where like the rough is really just a factor off the tee, it's a factor around the green at this golf course, right? Similar to Oak Hill, Winged Foot, some of the other US Open kind of setups that you've seen. When you miss these small greens, which are I believe like 5,000 square foot greens, which are like slightly below the tour average in terms of size. They're not tiny, but they're definitely not like large greens. They're small targets out there. You're going to be penalized for it. So tomorrow, conditions I think will play similar to what you saw there in 2020. So maybe like this 1.8 over par scoring average that you saw for all 4 rounds. I think that's a good target for round 1. The issue is, right, for the rounds 2 through 4, I don't want to say it's going to be a birdie fest, right? Let's not go that far. You still have to go out there and execute your golf shots, but I think you could see something like 7 to 8 under par if the winds die down, like what we're going to see here for Friday. So I know a lot of people this week, right, are using very difficult narratives. They're using like, oh, we got to look at major championship setups to do our analysis. And I was doing that there on Monday. I'm not doing that now, right? I've adjusted some of my thought process. I've definitely come around to the fact that I think it'll play easy for the last 3 days. You can see on Saturday, if it actually is a little bit more windy, right, maybe that's a more difficult round, right, where it still plays like a stroke, maybe stroke and a half over par. But if any of the last few days are like we have here on Friday, or especially Friday afternoon, where it looks extremely calm, at least that's GFS. Let's see what NAM looks like. That's apparently better for Friday afternoon. Yeah, it does look like Friday afternoon might actually be a little bit calmer than what we have in the morning. Then maybe they go out there and kill it there on Friday afternoon, right? Shoot someone like 7 to 8 under par. So you're definitely going to have your execution down to take this course low. But compared to 2020, I think you're going to see a different kind of leaderboard. Some of these shorter hitters, like a Brendan Todd, Mackenzie Hughes, Alanto Griffin, Brian Harmon, for example, I don't think you're going to see on the leaderboard this time around. Those kind of players were able to get by with how firm and fast the fairways were. They got a lot more rollout than they're going to get this time around. The ball's just going to stick where it lands. And when that happens, I know you might get preferred lies for like round 1. I mentioned that is a possibility. So it would be an advantage to be accurate maybe for that first round. But after that, right, it's going to be all about getting it out there and getting more carry distance on your drive. Still definitely think it'll be driving distance based out here in 2023, but maybe a little bit easier from the scoring perspective than I think a lot of people out there think. I think, maybe tomorrow, right, it'll be difficult. But by the time we get to Friday, people are going to be like, what the heck? I thought this was a major championship type of venue. It is. It's a difficult golf course, but any golf course, when it's receptive and there's no wind, is going to be under assault. I can guarantee you that. All right, let's hop into questions. Let's hop into chat and then talk some DFS. Afterwards, of course, we'll be going through props. So if you're here for those, we'll be touching on those towards the end of the live stream, probably like 15, maybe 20 minutes from now. But yeah, for that time period, it's time to talk some DFS. Let's see what we got. Is it a good strategy to leave 1 to 2K salary on the table for an event like this? My thought process is that a lot of your top end players, a lot of, especially because it's such a strong field, it's almost like a major championship. It'd be hard to leave that win equity on the table. Now, if this was an alternate field, let's say it was like a wacky, 50 to 70 player field, but it was like a Puerto Rico opened type of strength, I would definitely like that strategy. But maybe not with these kind of guys playing like a Rory out there. I can tell you that doing that would make you instantly unique, right? No one's going to do that this week. Jackson says, thoughts on ending with two guys sub 6.5K. I like that, Jackson. I'm going to have a lot of lineups like that. So I have no hesitation doing so. I don't see a huge difference between some of the guys that are like $6,500 and then some of the guys down here in the 5K range. Maybe there's a difference in form. You can see a lot of the recent form ranking guys that are down there in the 40s are 5K golfers, right? So it's very correlated to recent form, but it's not like a Seamus Power, a Tom Hoagie, a Patrick Rogers, right? Any of these guys down here can't go out there and pop any given week, right? A few of them are tour winners, right? Power, Hoagie, Patrick Rogers, not a tour winner yet, but has definitely had his fair share of like top 5, top 10. So I have no hesitation doing that for sure, especially because of what it buys you up top, right? That's the more important part. Single entry, not in our community contest. Okay. So no duplicating going on here, right? So you've got Hovland, Fleetwood, Homa, Young, English, and Kitayama. Is it too chalky? I think you're all right. So Hovland, Fleetwood, actually a little bit lower owned than I was expecting. And you've got Kitayama in there, English. You're probably okay, Mark. It's tough to say. There's going to be a lot of duplicates because there's only 50 players. John says, sup, Luke, you were wondering if leaving salary on the table can help to be somewhat contrarian. It can, for sure. I'd probably leave like 500 on the table, though. $2,000, people are saying like 1 to 2K. That's just overdoing it. At least for most slates, this is like not like your limited field kinds of stuff. If you leave $300 on the table, you're differentiating yourself from like 99.4% of lineups. So like right there, you're pretty much accomplishing everything you need to. Now in a week like this, people are going to be a little bit more willing to leave that salary, right? We've already had a few questions over it on just like the first like 10, 15 minutes here. So maybe you do leave like 500 to maybe 1,000 on the table, right, as opposed to like 300 to 500 like you would for most weeks. But don't like go 1 to 2K, right? I think that's just like a little bit too much. But yeah, a little bit of salary, John. I think it'll work out. It's like they're playing in the Windy City or something. Exactly, right? Super windy conditions. Did Fitz lose all his powers when the braces came off? I would love to see a little graphic, right, of when that happened and then his shots gained afterwards. But in all seriousness, it's a pretty good fit for him this week. So maybe it comes around. How am I handling Cam Young with his ability to pop? He's a core play for me. So he's actually a player that I've bet outright. I'm playing him over there for DFS. So I'm not sure if you've seen my core plays video yet. If you haven't, I have a whole segment where I talk up Cam Young, but I really like him here. I think that it's one of the better fits that he's ever had on the PGA Tour in terms of a golf course, right? One that rewards distance off the tee, and then one that agronomy-wise matches up with what he plays well. Is there more scoring when conditions are cloudy with soft and wet conditions, or when it's sunny and greens are firm? It's very nuanced. So you can't really just look at one factor and determine that. It depends on whether it's a long golf course to begin, right? A shorter golf course. I'll say for this week, right? If it's soft, it's going to play easier. The reason why it'll play easier if it's soft is that the fairways will be easier to hit, right? I mentioned there's like 4 or 5 inch rough, right? So like that's obviously going to help. And then with hitting greens out of the rough, if you do happen to miss the fairway, having receptive greens is the only way to hit a green out of the rough. Like at a 5-6 inch rough, if you go out there, go to a golf course that actually has that kind of rough, you'll see that you get 0 spin on the golf ball. And if they're firm greens too, I know you mentioned that, it's like hitting a trampoline, right? It's like literally dropping a golf ball on a piece of asphalt or a trampoline, and you have 0 chance of getting it to hold. So the receptive greens will 100% help. It'll make the golf course longer. I think with some of the rain, it's going to be a little bit more difficult early tomorrow, but like Friday through Sunday, it'll play a lot easier, at least in my opinion. Antonio says, what is my betting card? It is Cam Young, it is Victor, and Tommy Fleetwood. I have 3 players on it. Nothing crazy. Do I comp this course to Oak Hill and or Winged Foot? Yeah, I do. So on my course breakdown video, I comped it to those two there on a Monday. A lot of people watch my course breakdown and then parrot it throughout their content. So I'm sure you heard that in a few other podcasts. And now you're asking me about it. Yeah, they got it from me, from my course breakdown there on Monday. So Winged Foot because of the rough, small greens. Oak Hill as well, right? All of the greens are surrounded by deep rough rather than chipping areas. So yeah, I compare it to those kind of golf courses as opposed to something like a Southern Hills, because a Southern Hills has a few chipping hollows, like a Players Championship, for example, right? Has, shaved off fairway areas around the green. Oak Hill, Winged Foot, and then this golf course. And there's not many others that come to mind. Just like it's rough everywhere. And that's what it is this week. Also a bunch of trees. What's wrong with Finau, and does he have any chance? I think he's got a good chance. In terms of what's wrong, I guess let's look at the shots gained. I mean, I guess the putter, right? Other than that, it's fine. Tee to green, very on brand, right? Gaining across the board, and then losing a half a stroke putting. So he's just not putting well. Happens, right? Guys sometimes get into a little bit of a drought. If he snaps out of it, setting up for a pretty decent week, right? D Young, thoughts on Tom Kim and Ann? I worry about the distance factor here with the Tom Kim, not so much with the Benny Ann. My worry with Benny Ann, at least why I'm not playing him in the large field GPP, would be ownership, right? He's one of the higher owned plays on the entire slate, right? Not even just down here in this range. Actually, believe it or not, he might be the highest owned player on the slate. Let me think. Second highest owned player on the entire slate is Benny Ann, and that's the only guy who's higher owned than Benny Ann, by the way, just for transparency, is Rory McIlroy, right? And he's like 24, 25% owned, something like that in my last set of projections. So that's the issue with Benny Ann, is I think too many people like him. So if you're just betting outright, if you're taking matchups, heck, if you're just doing anything but a GPP lineup over there for DFS, so just like a single entry, anything but like the big $5 or $25 contest, he's fine. I like him. It makes a lot of sense. But, my exposure, right, what I'm talking about here for DFS is through the filter of the large $5 GPP, right? That's what I play every week. That's what we review there on the live streams. So I'm not going to love him because of the ownership. But hey, like I said, if you're not on those kind of builds, that's fine. You can definitely play him. What am I doing with Hideki? Dude is an enigma. I agree with you on that. He's very hard to predict. I'm not playing him here just because of the off the tee play. He's a little bit sporadic there. And there are a few guys around him that I just like a little bit more. But up top, if there's somebody that you have a lean on, especially somebody like Hideki, who's not overly mega chalky this week, right? In fact, I think he's one of the lower owned players, I'd say, here in the 9K range. I have no issues getting there whatsoever. Any Eric Kolov? I think he's just a good player, Jackson. I don't think it's a good golf course for him at all. I think it's one of the worst actually on tour in terms of a course fit, but he's just a gamer. And if you think the gamer is going to come through, I have no problems with that. Kevin says, what are my thoughts on Rose and Shank? Rose, I think, sets up decently for the golf course. It's not a very strong take, though, right? Like, I think he's an okay play. And then Adam Shank, I actually really like here. He plays well at golf courses that are kind of off the tee heavy. Innisbrook comes to mind, a few recent tracks where it's been a lot of drivers off the tee that he's played well. With the receptive conditions, I think you're going to see a lot of drivers from players this time around. I like Adam Shank this week. Definitely one of my hotter prospects. If you're choosing between English and Colmark, you've got to ask yourself what you're looking for, right? If you're looking for upside, I'd probably side towards English, right? English, more of a track record when it comes to top fives. If you're looking for consistency, right? You're in a single entry, maybe like a single, a cash contest, maybe. Maybe you look at Eric Cole, right? He's been a little bit more consistent. So it depends on what you're looking for, Mark. But, to me, English is a little bit more volatile, but also has a lower floor. James says, thoughts on Griot? Really good driver of the golf ball. So if you're looking for that this week, like I am, he's going to pretty much be somebody you have to play, right? The issue here, kind of like a Benny Ann, is that he's mega chalky. Like everyone's playing Emiliano Grillo, which is deservingly so, right? Like I said, is just on an absolute heater right now. But you got to ask yourself, is he twice as likely to succeed as all of the guys around him? And in most cases, maybe a few cases, the answer there would be yes. but in most of them, the answer would be no. So it depends on the contest you're in. If you're in a single entry, smaller field kind of contest, I think it makes a lot of sense. Why does it feel like Rory is about to boat race the field? It wouldn't surprise me, Antonio. If he keeps the ball in play, in fact, if Scotty does, if Rory goes out there, drives it like that, I mean, Victor Hovland, we know he can hit the ball in an absolute string out there. If any of them get in the zone, they could win this by 5-6 strokes. It's that kind of golf course where, if you're not missing, I mentioned like 7-8 under par being a possibility, right? Jon Rahm shot 6 under that last day there in 2020 when the winning score was -4. This time around, I think you're going to see even more of that kind of volatility. And, like I said, if someone gets into that zone there, proverbial zone that we hear about, could very well go out there and nuke the golf course. I could see it, man, for sure. Maybe it's Rory, maybe it's someone else. You're choosing between Hovland or Fleetwood. So if you have the salary and you don't need to differentiate or anything, right, you take Hovland. Now, the reason why we mention that is you might have a little bit of a chalkier build to worry about there. You might need to, save a little salary to upgrade one of your other 5 spots, right, in that lineup. It all kind of depends on the rest of your build. If you're comfortable in terms of salary, in terms of lineup construction, take Victor Hovland, right? I have no problems with that. But if you need any sort of differentiation, take Tommy Fleetwood. In fact, you might even want to leave the salary on the table, right? Maybe you spend up a little bit more with another spot, but spending down the $600 is going to make it really easy for you to at least leave like $200 to $300 on the table, and can help you out if you're having problems with differentiation. So I don't know. It depends, man. Depends on the rest of your build. What's going on, Bobby? He says, another huge week. Let's make it another one, huh? That'd be nice. Maga says, this week has been the hardest to try and predict. Usually you feel good, but you don't feel confident at all. Maybe that's a good thing then, Maga, right? I don't see you winning GPPs every single week, right? So maybe it's a good thing. Higher scores seem to throw you off. Yeah, for me, it's the small field, right? You only got 50 players. Ownership is so condensed. It's just kind of wonky. How does Hodges model well for this golf course? Based on his recent play, it does. So if you take a look at his last 12 rounds, they 100% model well, and he's super cheap too, right? What is he? $6,100. I'm mostly looking for guys that can drive it pretty straight and long. He's been doing that over the last month or so. That can putt it decently, and they're good iron players, right? He checks those boxes. The issue is, and I mean, it doesn't fall off that much. I mean, don't get me wrong here, but it starts to fall off a little bit, right? The more we zoom out, right? The putter is no longer, a stroke per round. He's still pretty good off the tee, still pretty damn good on approach. So he's a good play this week, but I kind of worry about his, the fact that it's so recent. It feels like you're kind of buying at his peak, doesn't it? You'll ask, do I think Glover can get a top 10? For sure. I think anyone can. There's only 50 players, right? So a top 10 is just a top 20th percentile performance. For somebody like Glover, you just got to sustain what you're doing, right? If he goes out there, he continues the hot play. What's his price tag? Right, he's $9,100. Guy has an arm and a leg this week in terms of price tag. He can 100% top 10. Do I think he's going to? No, but can he? Absolutely, he can. Anyone in this field that's made it this far could definitely top 10. It feels like nobody talks about Davis, and he always top 10s or top 5s every week. Look at his beginning of the year stats. He doesn't top 5 or top 10 every week. In fact, he missed like 8 straight cuts to start the season. I love him to death. I'm playing him this week. Don't get me wrong, but he's a volatile mofo. He's not that consistent guy. Trust me. You win. You're not MAGA on DraftKings, so you win GPPs every week. Damn, you should be giving us the picks then, man. I got to say that much. What about Kitayama in the top 5? I think that he's got a shot too, right? I mean, anyone in this kind of field, right? A top 5 is the equivalent of like a top 15 or 20, right? It's not like it's a crazy performance to finish in the top 10% of this field, right? That's what a top 5 would be out here. So Kitayama, if anyone's going to, if you're going to bet on top 5, I know it's a strong field. The terms of like odds, in terms of the value that you're getting, I think long shot top 5s aren't a bad idea, right? There's the whole psychological thing. You're like, oh, it's a top 5 in a major. he's not playing against 156 people or like 140 people like you get with an Open Championship. It's a different ball game. And I know you're like, oh, but like 50 through 120, like they don't matter. Like they do matter. Not as much, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're as good as these top 50. I mean, that's obviously not true, but they matter, right? They change the odds. Davis was sick at the beginning of the season, allegedly. Yeah, I saw that too. I'm not sure what he had going on, but yeah, he obviously is a little bit better now. But even before that, dude, he was not Mr. Consistency. He was like Mr. 55% cut rate. So it's not just like a this year kind of thing. Is Day being overlooked? This course fits him to a T. He's played horribly here and at these playoff events over the years. Back in 2020, did he start? He did. He finished sixth from last place. There were only 70 players, 2 of them DNP'd, so there were only 68 players. And he finished in 64th place. That included losses of over 9 strokes ball striking. So I don't know if it fits him, honestly. Maybe like the course fit model is okay on him. Let me see what I have him at. I'll bring it up on my other tab. I'm not sure if he models well, at least what I'm looking at. Maybe with what you are. But yeah, he's where's the ranking? Number 34 in the field and number 19 in pricing. So yeah, my model wasn't as big on his prospects. Weather edge tomorrow, I think a slight edge towards the guys going off a little bit later. If you're going to break any ties, I meant to mention this a little bit earlier, right? Maybe you take the guys going a little bit later. So if you look at the actual hour-by-hour forecast, we'll go to the HRRR. It's the most up-to-date. Let's go ahead and just refresh this. Make sure we're working with the most up-to-date. And yeah, you can see really early, they're calling for like 30 to 35 mile an hour wind gusts. They're teeing off at like, I think it's 8:45 local time. So it's only going to be for like the first maybe hour of play where the wind gusts are really high. So like if you're teeing off from like 11 a.m. onwards, I think you might have a slight edge tomorrow. Now, earlier today, they were calling for lower winds in the PM than what they are for right now. It's actually gone a little bit worse, this forecast, as the day has gone on. So I don't think it's as big of an edge as like what we had at like 3 p.m. Today, but it's still like a slight edge, right? You don't want guys teeing off like first tomorrow because over there for Friday morning, it looks like pretty ideal conditions, right? If you're one of the first ones off there on Friday morning, which if you're one of the late starters right there tomorrow, you're going to be one of the earlier guys tomorrow. Sorry, I should say for Friday, you're going to get perfect conditions, right? So like if one set of players is dealing with like 35 mile an hour wind gusts, one of them's dealing with perfect conditions the next day, I would slightly favor, right, the ones that are going off late. But it's not too crazy. I just realized I thought I had my weather projections up. That was fun. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I was on the wrong tab. Yeah, I refreshed it. It looks very similar to before, but you can see here, right, from like 7 until 10 a.m., they're calling for those really high wind gusts. So you might see that slight edge, but it's nothing crazy. Don't overdo it, I would say. Let's see. Let's go through a few players that I like, and then we'll talk some props. So in terms of player pool, right, I still like Hovland, Fleetwood, Cam Young. I'm just keeping my betting card to those 3 as it's a limited field, right? You can't bet like 5-6 players and get away with it in this kind of field. So just not going to go crazy in terms of exposure. There's a good chance that I'm going to live ad somebody at some point, right? Maybe after Friday's round, we go out there, find a live ad that's worth taking. But until then, yeah, just going to go with those 3 players. In terms of this middle tier range, in terms of exposure, there's not a bunch of people that are highly owned here, right? Like Lucas Glover's getting some attention, but outside of that, ownership is really spread out. So if you're looking for a pivot, it's in this range. Jason Day, I know I trashed him for his performance last time out, but he's like 5% owned. So if you're looking for any sort of pivot, he's a really good guy to consider for that kind of lineup. Let's see, you've got Ricky Fowler here, right? He's in crazy form. He's relatively low owned. Sungjae Im, he's moderately owned too. You can consider him in this range. Corey Connors, Wyndham Clark. I know that they're not in sparkling form coming in, especially Wyndham Clark, right? He's number 40 in the field when it comes to recent form ranking. But just look at his performance at other off-the-tee heavy golf courses where he went out there and won multiple times, right? Multiple times. I know Quail Hollows, I don't know if we call his other solid performances, like driver heavy golf courses. But the win at Quail Hollow, undoubtedly, right? A really driver heavy golf course. LACC, maybe not so much. I know it's a US Open, but that golf course wasn't that demanding off the tee. But yeah, he's made for these kind of tracks, right? He's big, he's strong, he can extricate himself from all of that rough that he needs to. So I like him. Just wanted to point him out. Matt Fitzpatrick going way overlooked. I know he's number 50 in the field last when it comes to recent form ranking, but if he snaps out of it, you're getting him at literally no ownership, and that seems pretty intriguing. In terms of chalk, we mentioned Benny Ann, right? Emiliano Grillo getting some ownership down here. Adam Shank, a little bit steamy. You got a little bit of steam on Eric Cole. Not as much as like a Lee Hodges. Lee Hodges, one of the higher owned players down here towards the bottom. And then believe it or not, Patrick Rogers, because he's just so damn cheap. And Patrick Rogers, like, I know the form's not amazing, but like he's had a decent year, right? All things considered. He's over 10% owned. I think he was like 11% owned the last time I checked. That's just crazy to even think, right? That the cheapest player in the field is going to be 11% owned. So just know if you're taking pivots down here, right, and you're thinking that you're going to get somebody that's like 2% owned, think again, okay? I think the lowest owned player down here was Seamus Power, and he was like 5.5% owned. So when you're getting to lineup construction, right, just know that you kind of are forced into pivoting in the middle tier range a little bit more, right? Normally, like especially when I build like studs and duds kind of lineups, I can kind of bank on the fact that my 6K players are going to be like 1, maybe 2% owned at the very most. That's not the case this week, right? If you're going to get different, right, you kind of have to force yourself to be uncomfortable towards the top end of the board, which is where like a Wyndham Clark would be extremely useful, right? Because he's low owned this week. If I'm not playing Jason Day, I have zero interest. But if you wanted to, right, he would be really useful for doing that. I mean, to get yourself a little bit different, right? Let's see, Matt Fitzpatrick, he fits that description. So there are chalky plays I like a Fleetwood, a Victor Hovland, Rory. In fact, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I'm playing all 3 of the big 3 this week. I'm playing all 3 of these guys up here, right? I'm going to take them at high ownership, high price tag, spread out my ownership pretty well across these 3 players, right? I'm going to have to take some uncomfortable plays with them, right? To offset the ownership, to try and get some sort of leverage to the field to take advantage of. And that's the key this week. It's not who you play, it's how you play them this week, okay? That's the key to go out there and have yourself a profitable week, at least from the GPP perspective. Let's go through some lineup construction notes real quickly, and then I'll talk some props. Nope, wrong screen. Sharing the wrong shit. That is on me. There we go. All right, let's hop over to Draftkings. Let's throw the community contest lineup down in chat. Let's go ahead and do that right now, actually. Look at that. By the way, Glodfc is the highest average points of anybody in the community contest. So if you're down there, go ahead and talk your shit down there. That's the real flex, by the way, right? Community contest. I mean, the highest average points. That's the real flex. I'm going to go ahead and throw the community contest link down in chat for you guys. Of course, it's the $1 single entry. Get your lineup reviewed. Talk some shit, right? Try and make some money in the process. But I mostly brought it up so that we can go through some lineup construction notes. So if you're building your lineups this week, let me show you how easy it is to take like 2 of these top end players. So let's throw Rahm into a lineup. Let's throw Hovland into 2 guys, right? 10K plus this week. You're down to 7,100 remaining. You may go, oh, well, that means you can't take anyone in this mid-tier range, right? You know, those differentiation pieces you were talking about, Luke, you can't even take one. Well, let me show you. You can go ahead and still take Wyndham Clark, and I'll show you how. You go down here and you take a Kurt Kitayama. It's that easy. You're back up to $7,000 remaining. You find a guy in the 6K range you like too. I mean, there's a bunch of options. You throw a Denny McCarthy in there for the heck of it, and you take your favorite option at $7,400. I mean, this kind of lineup, even if you took Rio, right, you left 0 salary on the table. I know it's maybe going to be duplicated once in this large field GPP, hopefully 0 times, right? There's a chance that it's maybe one of like 1 or 2 duplicates, and you just deal with that. If you really want to make sure that you're not duplicated, right, start from Taylor Moore, right, and take somebody from there on down. in the pricing, right? That leave the $200 on the table with 3, maybe even 4 pivots in this kind of lineup, right? It's 3 in this lineup. If you were to take like a pivot down here, you can get away with that, right? Especially if you have a little bit of salary left on the table. So I know people were like asking about leaving like 2K on the table. So like maybe with your last pick here, going down to the 5K range and trying to play somebody, I just think that's overdoing it, right? Like if you were going to go down, maybe you leave like $600, $700 on the table here with like a Putnam or a Brendan Todd. But that's what I wouldn't go anything past that. Like maybe a Shank, right? You really like Shank or English. Obviously, those are plays that I like this week. So maybe I would just slightly push it a little bit further, but like at the most, like 1K on the table, right? If we took Harris English with our last spot here, right, that would be $1,000 on the table. Like I think that would be very aggressive with leaving salary. If you're playing cash this week, call 1-800-GAMBLER. No, just kidding. If you're playing cash this week, I don't see a massive edge to be had. I would probably be a little bit more balanced in the cash lineup. Right? I try to avoid some of these like 5K players if I was playing in cash. But yeah, it's pretty damn degenerate if you're going out there and you're playing cash this week. It just doesn't feel like a large edge to be had. And in fact, with PGA DFS these days, doesn't feel like a great slate in general to be playing a cash contest. So we'll leave it at that for DFS. We'll go over any questions, any that are left for the DFS side. And then after that, we'll talk props. So if you're hopping on out of here right now, you're done with the DFS talk, you don't do props, appreciate you. Hit the like button on the way out as well. And show up for our live streams for showdowns for rounds 2 through 4. I'll be doing the same thing, talking showdown and props there for Friday through Sunday. So look forward to that, and best of luck this week. But I know a lot of you sweaty tryhards out there are ready for, first off, a few questions to get answered out here for DFS, and then the prop side, which has just been, we talk about it all the time that it's a print fest for the props, but it literally is. Like, it's not just me saying that. Like, a lot of touts out there, like, oh, it's gonna be a print fest this week. They go out there, they lose money on their lineups. Like, no, literally, I've taken out, in terms of props, over $50,000 just this year from props, let alone last year was all into the 6 figures, right? I mean, it's literally a print fest when it comes to props. Thoughts on Sepp Straka? His irons caught fire last Sunday, and he's in really good form, Chris. So I like him as a flyer. The issue is that he's one of the earlier tee times. So if you are looking at the weather edge, that's probably going to hurt his chances a little bit. But I'm okay playing him regardless, right? It's only going to be for like an hour or two. That's an issue anyways. You like Tom Kim? Thoughts? Not a huge Tom Kim guy this week. For me, it's the off the tee play that worries me, right? He's accurate, but not very long. But it's PGA DFS. Guys play well at golf courses that don't fit their games well. Don't let that talk you off of them. You're totally fine playing Tom Kim. He's been playing really well of late. Do I like Taylor Moore? He shit the bed on Sunday, but finished strong. I do like him this week, Antonio, because he played well last week, and he's been playing well for a few weeks now, yet still comes in. He's lower owned than like Lee Hodges by like 4 or 5%. That was enough for me. First round leader, I don't have any hot takes for you. But I would say, Mito, if you're trying to bet one, I don't hate the later tee times. Right? I mentioned perhaps the guys going out later, getting the better end of the spectrum. Like, they're going to have slightly lower wins. It's not going to rain during play, right, for the guys going off late. Like, maybe you take I'll give you one here. Well, I'll give you one name, okay? It'd be like one of these late guys, right? If you're trying to narrow it down, I would take one of the late guys. I'm trying to find you one that's just like a crazy long shot, because this is probably not going to hit, right? Let's be honest. There's 50 players. Picking the best score out of 50 is a 2% proposition. But let's go Tony Finau. If you're going to bet anyone in the PM Wave, just randomly, Tony Finau. Reason why I say that, by the way, is if he just catches heat with that putter, instant first round leader. Can you give us my Ryder Cup team? I love it, Antonio, and I absolutely will. So if I was putting together my U.S. team right now, the automatic qualifiers, obviously pencil them in. Let's just talk about the bubble, right? The only people that matter, right, on the team are the ones that are just hardly going to get in. So if I were going to pick the team, and it's not like who I think is actually going to get picked, 100% Brooks is on the team, even if he doesn't automatically qualify. which I think he's got a really high chance to automatically qualify. But let's just say the hypothetical that he got pushed out for some reason, he would 100 million% be a captain's pick. And I do think that Zach Johnson will pick him if that happens, by the way. But on top of that, I would pick Bryson DeChambeau for the Ryder Cup team if I was running it, and I would pick Dustin Johnson. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that. I do not really give a fuck. I watch every single Live Tour event. I know how it works. First off, their form over there is ridiculous for both of those players, and they've shown up at Ryder Cups in the past and absolutely killed it. DJ's been quoted as being the best Ryder Cup teammate in U.S. history by multiple players. Azinger, as one of the co-captains, had said that multiple times about him. Players agreed with that. So DJ, for me, I know the form's not like insane, but he's like a shoo-in for the team because of the other stuff, like what he does outside of the playing. And I think that makes him so important. So I would have those two on the team, which means you'd have to kick out a few guys on the bubble, right? So for me, Keegan Bradley, not a Ryder Cup player. Lucas Glover, not a Ryder Cup player. JT, definitely not a Ryder Cup player. I love JT. He's one of my favorite players, by the way. He should not be on that team. Who else? Max Homa, I don't think should be on the team unless he plays really well this weekend at East Lake. Those may be a little bit of hot takes. That's my take on the situation. I think that Denny McCarthy making the team would be ludicrous. I think that, is there any other like bubble guys, I guess, to worry about? I think Sam Burns making the team is like 50-50 to me. Like, if they're not going to take, and by the way, they're not going to take Bryson. I know or DJ. I mentioned DJ 100%, right? Being on the team, maybe Bryson. They're not going to take either one. I can just tell you that I don't think Zach Johnson will pick either one of those two. But that's where Sam Burns comes in, right? Like, he'll probably make the team because of that. And then Keegan Bradley, he probably makes the team, especially if he plays well this week, because they're not going to take those kind of players. So it's a tough one, man. Tough one for sure. So that's your current lineup. What are my thoughts? Let's see. So it's on FanDuel, right? So you can go kind of crazy with the top end options. Looks like a pretty good lineup, man. Henley, thoughts? I think he's a decent play this week, James. One of the last players out of my poll, just because I couldn't play everybody. But if anyone that's a shorter player is going to get it done here, it's an elite accuracy guy like Henley, right? He's number one on the tour in accuracy. Has Scotty become a bona fide Luke List, world-class ball striker, horrid putter? I don't know if I'd put him in that category. He still has a few spike weeks. Luke List is lucky to have 1-2 spike rounds a year, let alone 1-2 spike weeks. So I'm not sure if we're there yet. You were surprised to see after the math, there's still like 15 mil combinations from a 50 pull. For sure, yeah, there's a lot of different combinations, but there's only so many playable combinations. That's the issue self, right? You go in there and you do 60, choose 6, whatever it is. Sorry, 50, choose 6. You get like 15 million, right? No one's going to play the ones that are like all $5,000 golfers, or all the ones that are like 4 5K golfers and then 1 10K golfer, right? You have to do playable combinations, which there are ways to solve for that, by the way. Those playable combinations are way, way, way lower. I mean, I'm talking in the magnitude of like 100, 1,000, right? As compared to 15 million. So respect the stats work self, but that's a more nuanced question than that. That's why there's less combinations than I think you realize. Ben Swizz, thoughts on your lineup? I think it's decent, Ben. I'm not going to tell you like who to play or who not to play, but I can just tell you that, on FanDuel, you've got a few pieces that are going to give you differentiation, right? Putnam, Kitayama should be relatively low owned, but yeah, it's up to you, man. Those guys up top, they look like good players, so I have no issues with them. But in terms of like construction, no issues. What's going on? You've got Homa, Clark, and Fowler under 71.5. Yeah, I don't agree with that, boss. I think it's going to play really hard tomorrow. If I had to guess a scoring average, I'd guess like 2 over par. The reason why I say I wouldn't recommend that either, Gust, is that like on the sports books, you're going to get like a good idea of what they're expecting tomorrow. Let me go ahead and just refresh it for you here. Let's see what we've got on those bets. So maybe they've turned in your favor. I would have no issues with them. So with Ricky, I have no issues with 71.5 on him. So I got him on Jock Market on the same number. So 71.5 for Ricky, I'm fine with. 71, I'm not. So it depends on what site you're on. I know an underdog, I think he's like 70.5, right? So like I wouldn't want to take his under on this sort of site, but if you're getting this 71.5 number that you can see here on DraftKings, I don't hate that. The issue is that it's minus 140, right? So if you're getting it on a prop site where you can get like minus 110 odds, like you get on most of like the Prize Picks underdog kind of sites, it's pretty close to like a minus 110 implied odds. I don't hate it, but maybe not at minus 140. And who are the other ones? You have Homa and Clark, right? Homa, I don't hate either at that. At 71.5, at least, I don't hate it. I took his fade at 70.5. So like I like his over at a stroke lower, obviously, but like if you're gonna get a better number on it, I don't think it's horrible. Let's see, where's Max at? Is he not on the board? He might not be. They don't have everyone up. That are on blind, yeah. They don't have them up right now. But like just for, I guess, a little bit of perspective, Wyndham Clark, right? He's pretty much even money at 71.5. I'm okay with it. Like, what did I take for a fade on Wyndham? Let me double check. Can't give everyone all my slips, obviously. So let me double check on that. So I have his under fantasy points, actually. So I don't think I hate that at all. If 71.5, because with my calculation, it was like if he shot 70 or worse, he went under in fantasy points. But that was me assuming that he's probably going to shoot like a 70 or 71. So yeah, I don't hate that bet at all, Gust. I think that makes sense. It's going to be hard out there tomorrow, so it's going to be a hell of a sweat. I can just tell you that much. You're going to be sweating buckets the entire time with these bets because it's going to play hard because of the wind. It's going to be real gusty out there tomorrow. Let's see what else we've got. Is Rodgers going to cook? We'll see. I hope so. He's $5,500. I'm using him as a random flyer value play, so probably not. DJ 5-0 last Ryder Cup. Yeah, exactly. And Bryson, I think, was like 3-1-1 or something. You think Harman or Clark are automatically in? Yeah, I think that's true too. Why do they have so many automatic qualifiers? And why are they so centered around the majors from just this season, right? Like for me, major championships matter. Don't get me wrong, but just like winning a major championship shouldn't be enough to get on the Ryder Cup team. So like for Harman especially, it's a little egregious for me. Wyndham Clark at least went out there, also won the Wells Fargo, right? So he has that going for him. But yeah, I agree with you, man. Of course, that's a good point. Yeah, it's you got to cut down those outcomes a little bit. Patrick Reed, 3-0 in Ryder Cup singles, has beaten Rory, Sergio Stenson, Rahm, Casey. I'm not even going to name them all, but yeah, everyone, right, on the Euro team. I actually kind of agree with that too. I don't know if I'd put him on the team because of how he's played on Live. Gotta say, right, I watch all the Live events. If I'm going to talk up DJ, if I'm going to talk up maybe even Gooch, right? I didn't even mention Gooch before. Gooch could probably be on the team too, if we're being honest. I'd rather have all of them over Patrick Reed just because Reed hasn't been playing as well over there. But you bring up a really good point with the track record, right? It might not matter, right? Like Poulter shows up to Ryder Cups playing like complete shit and then kills it. Can you deep dive Power real quick? He's too good of a player to be playing this bad. I agree with you. Let me bring up the stats over here, but I'm playing him for a bounce back. At least I'm hoping that he snaps out of it. But yeah, let's look at how he's been playing. It's not been good. He's losing pretty much across the board. Slight gainer with the putter there, 0.4 strokes. And then over the last 36, you can see it's kind of similar. In fact, he's only gaining 0.1 strokes with the flat stick. I definitely hope that he snaps out of it, but it's been a prolonged issue for Seamus. It's been like 2-3 months. Of course, I got you. Just wanted to see my general vibe. Yeah, it makes sense for me, Ben. Sometimes people come in here just like asking, for picks and whatnot, which I'll give a few. But yeah, just more than anything, right? You got to like your own lineup, right? That's why I answer that sort of way. And in terms of how it's constructed, your lineup makes plenty of sense. So cheers and best of luck, boss. Thoughts on Thigala? Talented player, at least in my opinion, not the best course fit, right? He deals with issues with driving accuracy. He's also not like an elite tier bomber, right? So it's not like he's the type of guy that gets away with not being very accurate. I'm very bullish on him. I play Sahith Thigala a lot more than other people, but not this week. Let's see. Thanks for the info. Of course, Gust. Let's talk some props now. Let me bring up the prop sites, and a lot's been bumped. I have to say, bump picks Underdog, we got to think of a way to make fun of them for bumping props too. They've been at it all week. I already have in 14 cards over here on Underdog. I've bet 28 of the 33 players they have up on the board here, all for fades. When they opened this board, it looked a lot different than it does now. Just for a few reference points, right? They had Sepp Straka at like 3 bogeys. He's the whole way up to 4 now, right? They opened to guys like a Victor Hovland. What did he take for him? I think it was strokes. He opened it like 69.5 strokes. Now he's only up to 70. So in fact, he's actually one of the ones that's only been bumped up by 0.5. So if you're going to take anything as of right now, it's probably those kind of plays. And just to give you an idea why, right? He's at 70 strokes. Let's look at his prop over here on DraftKings. He's at 70.5, right? So 0.5 higher, and he's minus 140 towards the over, right? So not only are you getting a minus 140 juice there, you're also getting the 0.5 discrepancy. So that's why I know we got the question before about like taking unders on 71.5. I just prefer fading it because not only are you getting the juice in your direction, you're also getting a few discrepancies like what we have right here. So we'll build a slip together here for the live stream. I think that's the best prop available as of right now. But like a John Rahm was at 69 strokes, right? He got bumped up. Xander was at 69.5. He got bumped up an entire stroke over there in Underdog. Jordan Spieth, 69.5 to 70.5. Ricky Fowler, same thing. Patrick Cantlay's only been bumped up by 0.5. So, yeah, again, what is Cantlay's odds? Just to give you a reference point. Where are you at, Patty Ice? I know they've got Patty Ice on here. Okay, so he's actually juiced towards the under, right, at 70.5. But he's 0.5 higher, right? So it's still, I think maybe the Victor Hovland prop, a little bit better than the Patty Ice one, but still definitely leans towards the over. Let's find you another one here. So yeah, again, they've bumped like everything. Actually, did they take the Justin Rose one off yet? So they still have him at 71 strokes. What are his odds? So he's 71.5 even money. Okay, so maybe not quite the prop I was hoping for, but it still is a 0.5 discrepancy. So it's not a horrible prop. I just wish they didn't bump everything because I have like 28 props that I've taken, guys. It's just none of them exist anymore. Literally every single one of them bumped. Different fucking props I took. And I know I only had 14 cards, so you're like, oh, 28 props. I literally only used each prop one time. And then they moved them. So it's not like I was spamming cards either. So they have Tommy at 3 bogeys. Over here on Prize Picks, they have a lot of these like mid-tier players like a Jason Day at 4 bogeys. So what is Jason Day? Is he at 3.5? Probably is. Knowing how they price this board. Where's J-Day? Yeah, so he's at 3.5 bogeys. That's definitely something we might be able to take. And then down here with Lucas Glover, they've gone at 3.5 too. Right, they're both at 4 bogeys over here on Prize Picks. So that's probably not a horrible idea, but we can line shop a little bit more. Maybe there's some low-hanging fruit that wasn't there before. They've got Clark, same thing. I think I'd rather take one of these two personally. Let's see what else. The birdie fades aren't really a thing. The fantasy score fades used to be a thing until they bumped down a bunch of them. In fact, this Lucas Glover one, I know they already bumped this one down a little bit. I don't think they've bumped it enough. So let's change the bogey prop over here to a fantasy score prop. And we might be able to actually make this a 3-man here for the stream slip. I know it's normally a 2-man that we go with, but we might be able to make this one a 3-man, maybe even a 4-man. Who knows? Might get a little frisky with it out here. Let's see, any other props that just stand out after all these damn bumps? I'm looking at the par 3 props right now, personally. They do have Hideki at 12. Anyone else? I just want to get our options here. I know it's mostly like elite tier players they've got at 12. Yeah, like Scotty, Rory, Rahm. Spieth's a really good par 3 player, so they've got him at 12. All right, let's do this. So if you're on stream, you haven't entered anything here for round 1 yet. I can't enter this slip. I've already maxed out all of these players. I'd probably enter this insured. I don't hate the idea of it at all. Again, Jason Day is 0.5 higher over on Prize Picks. He really struggles on these courses with long rough, or at least at this golf course last time, right? He lost like 9 strokes ball striking. Victor Hovland, once again, he's 0.5 higher and juiced towards the over. Lucas Glover, 19.75 fantasy points. He's at 71.5 strokes, right? Look at the other guys at 71.5 strokes. That's why it's such a good prop. 17.55, 18.25, right? 17.25. He's 2 fantasy points higher than all the guys at the same projections as him. Like, how's that make sense, right? Like, that obviously that's value to take advantage of. So I threw that in there. And then the one, let's just take the Hideki one out, actually. I'd probably rather run this as just like a straight 3, man, these 3 props. But either way, I think they're all 3 value. If you do want to make it the 4-man and throw in Hideki, by all means, go ahead and do so. That one's just a little bit more up to pin locations, right? And we don't have those as of yet, or at least I haven't looked at the pin locations yet. Speaking of, I'll check on Twitter, see if we have those. But yeah, until we see those pin locations, might hold off on that side. If this PGA Tour calms up. Let's see. Nope. No pin locations. That's kind of unfortunate. Alrighty. If that's the case, let's bring up some Prize Picks and then we'll hop on out of here. I know we're past our hour time that we normally go, but I still want to go through some Prize Picks for everyone out there. So what I was looking at today for Prize Picks is I took some overs for greens and regulation. Now they've bumped a good amount of the board to compensate, but my thinking here, right, is I know that there's going to be windy conditions, but we've got softer greens, right? In 2020, when this course played firm and fast, you still had over 10.4 greens in regulation per round for the field. So with softer greens, right, even with windy conditions, you'd think that it'd be at least the same, if not better, right? So I'm projecting for right around 11 GIR per round, which for somebody like Cam Davis, who opened at 9.5, you had guys like Scotty who opened at 11 greens. Same thing with Colin Morikawa. I was quick to hit their overs. If I was still betting their overs, which I'm not going to force these in, I already have a good amount of exposure for what I'm looking for. I'd probably try and take a few more guys that are just right elite tier, consistent ball strikers. So these 2 stand out. This Terrell Hatton, my boy Harley over on Discord pointed out to me a few days ago. He was able to cover this in all 4 rounds there in 2020. So with softer greens, right, you'd probably think that he could do it again. Rory, even though the ball striking early in the year wasn't great, he's now top 20 on the PGA Tour when it comes to green and regulation percentage, which early in the year he was like number 120. So he's come along a long way when it's come to the iron play of late. And if you're a little late to the party when it comes to Prize Picks, I'd consider taking those too, right? Soft greens. They are teeing off later, which once again, I said the worst conditions are going to be really early in the day, right? The first like hour or 2 of play when worst conditions are going to be. So by targeting guys like Rory and Terrell Hatton, you're able to get the guys going off slightly later and in slightly better wind conditions. So I would take those as of right now. Of course, on my Patreon, guys, I'm posting a lot more props, but like the Morikawa, the Scheffler ones, right, they get bumped up 0.5. Now, it's not bumped up immediately like they do over there on Underdog sometimes. Underdog is the quickest with the bumps by far. But yeah, within like an hour, I believe these were bumped last time. So just, it's annoying. It's just how these sports books work. And I know technically, right, these aren't sports books, but they sure like to act like them. That's for damn sure. So yeah, look at this. They got Victor at 71 strokes, right? He's 70 over here. Just to give you an idea, right? Lucas Glover, by the way, he's at like 72 strokes on Prize Picks. Clicking the wrong tab. Look at this. He's where's Lucas Glover at? Yeah, look, it's 72 strokes, right? So that's obviously a good fade. He's at an even higher projection than the 71.5. And then Jason Day, what do they've got J Day at? 72 strokes too, right? And we're getting him from over 3 bogeys. So you're telling me that means that he's not going to make more than 3.5 bogeys when he's going to shoot 2 over par, maybe even 3 over par. Like get real, right? So these fades for sure, I think are the way to take advantage of the board. If you're going to take any unders, right, and you're going to be like, you know what, I don't think it's going to play as difficult as what other people are expecting, do it on the sports books. I think you can get some pretty decent odds, particularly for like plus money overs. Plus money unders on a few players and a few circumstances. Or go over here onto Prize Picks. And you could probably play the board that way too, right? There's probably a few unders to consider, like a Cam Davis under, maybe not the worst idea, like a Tony Finau, maybe not the worst idea for an under. They've got Clark there. I believe Homa, right? In Fowler, right? Yeah. I know Gus Carter was asking about those ones before. It's not like the worst idea in human history. Like they even have Jordan Spieth at 71.5. What is he? 70. He's a whole stroke lower over here on Underdog. Let's see. Where is Jordan? Let's just type. Let's make it easier to find him, huh? Yeah, 70.5. Like, I don't hate the idea of taking a few of these unders, but with this weather forecast, I just can't do it, right? We'll refresh this for like the third time now, make sure it hasn't changed on us. But until this weather forecast changed, I just can't do it, right? Look at this. It's windy the entire day. In fact, the wind gusts on HRRR, this just updated 27 minutes ago, got even worse. The conditions are going to be even worse there for tomorrow than what we had before. The winds don't die down during the storm now. You still have that solid like 13 to 15 miles an hour the entire day, and then 20 to 30 mile an hour wind gusts. I mean, it looks like it's going to be a whole lot of fun. I can say that much. That's what makes it tough to take any sort of unders. Like, I see the value, right? Like, I could see these guys tearing up the golf course if the winds die. It's just you're almost making a calculated bet that happens. And I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm not a meteorologist. Let's see. Awesome that you go through and answer everyone, of course, no matter what the questions are. Recent sub and plan on being here forever. Well, appreciate that, Ben. You have a cat in your profile picture. I'm a big cat person. You'll see them jumping around the live stream here sometimes. So cheers to that, man. Glad to have you. You asked about power because he's literally the last option for a top 20. He's plus 370, plus 360. Sorry. I don't know what the hell I'm reading out here. Changing a 6 to a 7. Let's see. I don't have like a simulation up in front of me. I don't have like my top 20 percentage sheet up in front of me right now, Antonio. But I don't know if plus 360 is enough. It feels like plus 500. Like it's just me spitballing, right? Again, I don't have the sheet up. It feels like I'd want like plus 500 though. How many guys under 7K do I have in my pool? 1 second, I'll count them up for you, boss. So you said under 7K, right? A bunch under 7, but I'll give you a count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 players under 7K this week. So a good amount of my player pool is a combination of talent and faith versus wins. I hear you. It's possible, Gust, right? Especially with the receptive greens. But when the sports books that are making those hundreds of millions of dollars are saying one thing, I was thinking the same thing, by the way, early in the week. I was like, this course is going to play easier, right? I still think for Friday through Sunday, it's 100% going to play easier, right? It's just that those wins, they're tough, man, especially when they're 30-mile-an-hour wins. Do I think Scotty should pinch Lucas Glover's putter? I think that he should, yes. I think that they should ban anchoring, by the way. And we're at the end of the live stream now where I know only the golf hardos are here. So I'll hit you with another hot take. Anchoring the putter should be banned, and Lucas Glover anchors the putter. There's the hot take. I said it. I do not care. What he does is illegal. It is as shady can get out there on the golf course. That includes Wyndham Clark. That includes Ricky Fowler, who does the same thing, and anyone who uses that just atrocious looking putter out there. I ordered one. It gets here in 2 days. I'm going to try it out on the golf course. I'm a horrible, horrible putter. If I go out there and using that, if I putt better than I did before, they should ban them on the PGA Tour. Because if a hack like me can use a putter like that and start to make his like 8 to 10 footers, then they should not be legal. Like flat out. Like there's zero skill involved with putting if that's going to be the case. So Zeus just threw down a firebolt outside my house, apparently. One of the more loud lightning bolts that I've heard down here in Florida for a while. So I don't know if he liked that take, but it's true. I think it's cheating. What courses are similar to this? Winged Foot, I think also Oak Hill, right, in terms of major championships, are similar to what we get here. But in terms of what you see every year on tour, the Memorial Tournament, so like Jack's Place, similar agronomy, really deep rough, and small sloping greens are all like commonalities across those. Maybe if Glover's cheating, why doesn't everybody use it? People are starting to, Antonio. Like, first off, it was what? Like, Siwoo Kim that changed, right? And then you saw another player change to it. I think it was Keegan, right? Who like first started flashing with it a year and a half ago. Then you saw Siwoo change to it. And now there's like 5, 6 players that in the last 3 months have done it, Antonio. So you have. Players are starting to do that. Ricky wasn't using that 3 months ago. Wyndham Clark wasn't using that putter 4 or 5 months ago. And Wyndham, by the way, an elite putter before that. And even he changed to it because he saw how much easier it was to putt with. Now you got Lucas Glover using it. You've got guys like Scotty, right, Rory, that are now using a mallet style putter. I'm telling you, something's going on there, dude. It's those people aren't just changing putter, their livelihood for no reason. Right? It's because obviously something's working there. So I can give you some firsthand experience. I'll be trying it soon. What is the strength of my golf game? So I don't have many strengths, to be frank. I have not played much golf in the last month or so. Just really haven't made the time for it. I wish. I have my club championship on Saturday, so that's going to be fun. Luckily, it's a team event, so I'll have my brother to carry me. But irons for sure. Really good iron player. I'm a field player. I'm not somebody that goes out there and grinds on their golf swing whatsoever. I'm very good at manipulating my golf ball. So whether it's moving it left to right, right to left, up and down, I'm really good at flating my golf ball. And it's all just creativity and feel for me, right? If I hit a low shot, I move the ball in the back of my stance, I feel like I'm dragging my hands a little bit lower through the golf swing and the ball goes low, right? For me, it's not like a checklist that I go through before I hit the ball. So people ask me like, Luke, what's your swing thought? I literally don't have one. My swing thought is visualizing what the golf ball is going to do, right? The ball flight and whatnot, and then executing that golf swing. So my strength is my lack of thoughts on the golf course. I'm just a react kind of player. Put $7 on can't play to win Sunday morning. At the end of regulation, you were stupid not to cash out. Yeah, I could see that. That's crazy. You wanted the $200 there. If I was in that situation, I don't know what I would have done. But hey, I'll just say, Rick, hindsight is a bitch. Hindsight's 50-50. Don't beat yourself up about that, right? He could have very easily have won the golf tournament. You would love to see Scotty switch to the long putter. Could you imagine? Like, dude, I'm telling you, Antonio, in the next few weeks, if you start to see guys, especially because like the off season's coming up, in the fall, like people aren't playing as much. If we come back next year and everyone is using like the long putters, I told you so. Okay. Because they're going to have the time to make the change then. And I think if everyone's going to start switching over, it's going to be then when you see it, right? When like people after the Ryder Cup have the time to work on it, it would be hilarious to me. And I think they would ban it if that happens. If Woodland switches to the long putter and he starts draining 8 to 10 footers, then ban it. Literally, he might. That's the thing. Like at this point, Antonio, what do they have to lose? They see somebody like Glover, who is literally the worst putter I may have ever seen, other than maybe Will Zalatoris from like 5 to 10 feet, who's making like 25 footers now, draining par putts from 30 feet now to win golf tournaments. I can guarantee you that people are going to consider changing it and at the very least try to change. It might not work out, right? They're going to practice with it before they implement it and play, but they're at least going to give it a whirl. That's for damn sure. That's all I've got for the live stream, guys. Zeus is throwing down thunderbolts outside, so I think we might lose internet connection here soon. But I appreciate all the support here on the channel as per usual. Hit that like button on the way out of here, and make sure you stop on by for our round 2 through 4 streams. I'll be talking about Showdown props over there for Friday and Sunday, and be ready to get right back after it. So best of luck out there. Hope to see your names at the top of a few GPPs, and let's get this cash this week.